I'm Mark Halpert from 3D Learner. I'm sorry, what?
That's good. Great. We're ready.
Hi, I'm Mark Halpert from 3D Learner.
And I'm Mira Halpert from 3D Learner. Thank you for joining us.
And tonight we're going to be talking about a subject that only impacts a relatively small number of students, but it's incredibly important to their parents and to them. It's how do you beat third grade retention, especially for the kids who are right brain neurodivergent learners, that is, kids who learn differently. And our goal here is to help you to make the difference for your child.
All right. So we are presenting this presentation in the middle of March. Granted, it's just some people are on spring break, but quite honestly, what we're going to share with you tonight is something that is pretty universal, whether it starts when your child is at the beginning of third grade of the school year or near the end, or certainly as we are near one more quarter of school, I guess, to go, right?
And the key point to understand is it's almost never too late, and it's almost never too early. Okay. As we'll talk about, problems that kids have are often show up in the earlier grades, but sometimes parents are blindsided, even in March, to first find out that their kid's at risk for grade retention. It's a systemic problem. The way we look at it is you got to play the hand you're dealt. It's here in March. If your kid's at risk for third grade retention, what we're going to talk about is what you can do proactively, collaboratively, and dramatically to help your kid to significantly improve their reading comprehension, their other skills, and not only be promoted to fourth grade, but be promoted to fourth grade with the skills needed to succeed in fourth grade and beyond.
And beyond, right.
We've been doing this for 27 years. We've been a parent of kids in third grade for longer than we want to admit. Okay. And one of the focuses of our practice is on success by third grade or sooner. We help kids in high school, we help kids in middle school and in fourth and fifth grade. But if we can light a fire in the system and in parents to recognize that success by third grade or sooner is really when you want to get there. And one dad was asked, when do you do a program like 3D Learner? And he said, the day you find out about it. But our goal here is to say, we want to put you in a position where you can make the difference.
One of the reasons
3D Learner is a transformational hands-on program that improves spelling, vocabulary, reading comprehension, working memory, processing speed, self-esteem, and helps you to be the coach and advocate your child needs.
Right. One of the reasons that it's so vital to be able to work with kids, the third grade or before, to be able to get them on their right track to success, is that there's a huge amount of movement that's actually involved, meaning visual motor integration, body, left, right, which gets a little more.
We have a furry guest
who also wants to be able to. So I'm going to let Mark continue, and I am going to
take care of our furry friend. Okay. And one thing that often parents say to me is, there was an event that happened. It could have been third grade retention. It could have been a teacher saying your kid's really in trouble. It could be a private school parent whose private school tells them they're not invited back next year. Or, as has happened in a number of cases, parents just go, I know my kid is a lot smarter than present results would indicate, but they're just not achieving. And I've heard you can help. And that's really our forte, because the kids that come here are often a lot smarter, sometimes with above average, superior, and even gifted IQs, who find themselves facing third grade retention. We would argue it's a systemic problem, but as a parent, it's a problem you got to deal with. We know that it generates stress in your child, it generates stress in parents. Moms have a disproportionate amount of that stress. Okay. But the first place to start is to recognize that, and we're going to talk about Florida for the most part, but other states have similar laws. There are good cause exemptions. On our blog on third grade retention that was published on March 12th, we have a list of the good cause exemptions. Okay, your child can pass a portfolio, your child can pass an end of school year test, they can pass an end of summer test, they can be on grade level by the beginning of next school year, or if they have an individualized education plan, what's called an IEP, and they've already been held back once before third grade, they can't be held back a second time. And if you have questions about that, just give us a holler, because part of what we're trying to do is make sure parents not only aware, but if you have a question, we'd like to get that answer out to a lot more people. And the key from our perspective is these kids often come to us a year and a half, 2 years, and in a couple of cases, 2.5 and 3 years below grade level when they're at the end of third grade. And it's possible in many cases to get their reading comprehension close to, at, or even above grade level before they start fourth grade. And we've actually had a number of fourth graders who came to us in third grade who ended up getting 4s and 5s, which means they were either above grade level on the standardized tests next year or well above grade level. And actually had kids go into gifted classes because they were smart, they had a gifted IQ, but they didn't learn the way that schools taught. Mary can't hear you. So, okay, let me try this then. Okay.
Makes a big difference when you have muted yourself and then you're not on. So sorry. Okay. So there's for a lot of people, and especially with third grade and below, everybody is talking about the science of reading and how kids learn to be able to read, and what this and how everyone learns the same way. And what I've developed with the 3D Learner program, again, for 27 years, is there is a part of that is vitally important. But there's a part of it that if your children are really struggling, and they're usually struggling for a number of reasons, it's not just the one, there is something else additionally that is going on. And to be all honest, teachers in classrooms really don't have the time, some don't have the training. And again, we are post-pandemic, so there are a lot of things that these kids missed foundationally that are just underneath the surface. And because we're working so hard on the decoding skills and the fluency skills and even comprehension skills, those comprehension skills are lagging because the kids don't have these underlying skills, working memory, processing, visual motor integration. All of those things are vitally important to the learning and mastery of reading. And for our bright, right brain, neurodivergent kids, some with dyslexia, some not, that is the key. And more than anything, Mark will tell you that I am queen of looking at what kids can do. And we need to be able to go with their abilities, about being able to build up those other issues and then be able to have them recognize patterns and sounds and put all of that together.
And by the way, almost all the dyslexia functional MRIs that are done that take a picture of the brain show that in almost all dyslexic kids, the right brain is a lot more active than it is in the non-dyslexic kids. The difference with 3D Learner is we start by looking at these strengths. Is a kid a right brain, visual, kinesthetic, or what we might call a neurodivergent learner, who learns best when they see and experience information? Auditory issues are often caught, but visual processing issues are often missed. Probably the most missed processing problem kids have, where they skip words and lines when reading. And it turns out that these kids who are right-brained often have very good peripheral vision, so they see the world outside. They can tell you they just passed McDonald's, or there's the movie theater you just went to last week, or what somebody wore last week at an event, but they can't remember the three things you just told them. Okay. So these are signs of a kid who learns best when they see and experience information. Okay. And when you catch how they learn best, and then you catch that visual processing issue, you can teach them to their strengths and you can identify and address the visual processing issue. The other thing is a lot of people assume when you do a dyslexia program, you learn to decode and therefore reading fluency will improve and so will comprehension. Reading fluency will certainly improve, which is how well accurately a kid reads. But reading comprehension is often dependent on, do I remember the rules that I met? Can I process the information effectively? And
That's
then
really
surrounding.
right. It's really language development. Do I understand what the words mean? Can I use those words in multiple settings? Am I flexible with those words? And do I really understand that? And all of that is actually really a huge part of the
science.
science.
And those high frequency words are what makes tricky tests very tricky for these kids, where they think of multiple answers, not necessarily quote unquote the right answer. Right. And then surrounding this whole circle is anxiety and frustration, which also often set in. And then if you think about it around that whole picture is parental anxiety and frustration, because you know your kid's smart, you send them to a good school, and they don't get the results. And the reason is a mismatch between how these kids learn and what their processing issues are versus the way the schools teach. Because the schools assume these are intact and these are intact. They're doing double time on this in some cases, and they're ignoring this.
Right.
And they're never dealing with the anxiety issue.
Can I make one quick addition to what Mark is saying about the visual processing? And remember, our key here is processing. So I'm not a vision specialist, I'm a learning specialist and overall. And we're finding, one, that the number of schools are taking away vision screening in kindergarten and first grade. Well, that takes away certain things. And the other piece, I can't tell you how many parents will say, but my kid has 20/20 vision. The 20/20 is an acuity piece. That's how clearly we see it. It's not necessarily that kids need glasses or not. It is how the function of how they are working together, right? You can have one arm that's stronger than the other, and that's fine. You can get along just fine except when you go to pick up something and you need both hands to be able to pick it up, and one is stronger and the other is not. What happens? Well, we don't necessarily do that as often as we need both eyes to be able to work together, to be able to do writing and to do reading and to do problems that are 15 to 18 inches away from where our face is on hours a day kind of work. And that's what we're talking about, trying to be able to help kids do the functionality piece, not the acuity vision piece.
And there's a great deal of, I'll call it misleading information, which says dyslexia is not caused by visual processing issues, which is true. But if a kid's got a visual processing issue, it makes everything else out of whack. And we had a student who failed the third grade test and facing grade retention. And he had these problems. And then we showed his grandfather what his visual tracking was like before and after training. And his grandfather was an ophthalmologist who had fought this for years. And he goes, I think I fought the wrong battle. I think this is probably the single biggest issue that even vision professionals miss. So Mira, God bless her, had this problem as a kid. So did I. She's actually on the board of a company that's working on virtual reality games to work with this. So she's not a vision expert. She's just an educator who knows an awful lot about this. Yeah. One of the things that people say is your kid will catch up. But it turns out that almost 90% of the first graders with a word identification problem will have a reading problem in fourth grade, and 74% of the kids with a reading problem or dyslexia in third grade will still have it in 12th grade. These problems tend to persist, and the gaps tend to widen because as you go from learning to read to reading to learn, now reading impacts everything. So the key is to get to that reading comprehension up as soon as you can. Now, part of the challenge here is we've had a lot of people who say, well, I just want to get my kid promoted. And we've had cases where the kids come in 2 years below grade level, and they can get promoted by getting them their reading just a little bit better, but they're still going to be a year and a half or 2 years below grade level. So the key here is to actually look at it and say, how can I actually get my kid back to the point where they're reading at grade level, if they have the capability to do that? And we do it in a way that actually also improves academic test scores, athletic skills, and self-esteem. The athletics is sort of a benefit of what we
It's a
do.
wonderful hook.
It's a hook that actually excites the kids. If we can tell a kid it's going to improve your baseball or your dancing or something like that, they're into it. And so we use tools to improve attention, visual processing, and self-esteem, and it works for all of them. Okay. So what do we suggest you do? There are rare cases where grade retention might be right, where kids are very late birthdays, maturing slowly, but that's about 1 out of 20 kids we see. So if you're facing third grade retention, we suggest rejecting that as acceptable and find a way to find out how your child learns best, what their strengths are, and their present level of performance on both the standardized test and reading comprehension. And I say the standardized test because sometimes your kid's this close to passing and they just need a bump to pass. Okay. But you want to know what their reading comprehension is. So if a kid's a typical kid who come to us at, let's say you're right down the third grade, 7th month, they're often at the second grade, 2nd month, a year and a half below grade level reading comprehension. And we've had kids who have 135 IQ in that situation. So it's not unusual for that gap to be large. And then we suggest set a goal, and it might be to set a goal by the end of school to have your kid be promoted, and by the end of the summer to actually have your kid reading at grade level or above, and having all those other processing issues dealt with in a way that gives them the tool set to succeed in 4th grade and beyond. And here we say get help both from your child's school and from the right outside professional, because your child's teacher probably knows a lot about your child that's very helpful to get them over that hump and get them promoted. And they have a lot of incentive at schools to get kids promoted, but they're not necessarily going to have a transformational result between now and the end of school. So you need to do both to actually get there. And then, and by the way, in this case, you might actually ask your teacher where the child's at. One of the things is if they have a portfolio and they've completed it, they can be promoted, and they might be close, or in most cases they either haven't started it or they don't have time to finish it before the school year. So, but find out from your teacher where your child's at. And then remember, take massive action now. I mean, this is probably every parent we've had has what we call a turning point. That one moment where they reject the status quo and say, I'm going to make a huge difference in my kid's life now. And this is probably the most prevalent turning point, where your kid wants to be promoted, you want him promoted, but you don't want to continue the drudgery of working double or triple time to have him succeed. You want to give them the tools to succeed. And that's it. And if anybody's got, wants to discuss this situation, we offer a free consult. Okay. And you can either get that by calling us at 561-361-7495, or there's a tab on our website, or you just type in 3dlearner.com/book now and schedule a time with us. And really, we want to help a lot of people, whether they actually become our clients or not. This is a passion of ours, to help a kid succeed by 3rd grade or sooner. So don't hesitate to call us, and put your child. We call putting your child on the pathway from stress to outrageous success, because that's our goal for your child to be reaching their full potential by the time they start fourth grade, because it gets much harder next year.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please don't hesitate to call us. We're here to be able to try and help you in any way that we can. Have a wonderful evening. Happy spring.